It's Friday night, and that must mean one thing. It's Friday Night Photoshop. Hi, I'm Mike Leonard, and we're going to be talking about tipping some color images to black and white, and then we're going to talk about colorizing some older black and white images. And there are some better ways to do this, and there are some shortcuts, but those are not the better ways. So let's dive right in, and let me show you what I'm talking about. So I've just opened up an image that's got some graphics on it. And if you look at this, the message is pretty clear. Admission is free, no need to pay 25 bucks for Friday Night Photoshop. And now it's all online via Zoom. But let's say I wanted to make this black and white. So a quick way to do that is just to do a Control U, and that brings up the hue and saturation, and then I could just simply desaturate. And this will make something black and white. But the message may not be the same. So this is why I'm saying there's better ways to tip things to black and white than just simply desaturating. Yeah, this is a quick way that you can just go in and be done, but that's not the best way because you'll see the message is totally different. So here's how we want to go to black and white. We're going to go up to Image, and then we're going to come to Adjustments, and then we're going to go to black and white. So again, Image, this is in Photoshop, then to Adjustments, the second one down. And this is one of those times we have to go to a menu, then to another menu. And this is going to be black and white. So when I click on this, well, instantly I've got black and white. I've just removed all the color. And it's perhaps not the best, but it is, we can arguably say, is black and white. But let's look at some different forms of black and white. The first thing we can do here is look at the preset, and this right now is in default. Well, I could choose different ones of these, and as I step through these, you'll see the effect directly. So this is what it looks like by using a blue filter. Now if I just go and click in this area and turn my thumb wheel, here's darker, here's using a green filter, high contrast blue filter, high contrast red filter. See, these are all still black and white, but you'll notice how things are popping a little bit differently. So that one's not so good. So you can see how the message is really different depending upon how you desaturate. So let's just take a look at the preview. This is where we're starting, and this is where we're ending. Wouldn't it be nice if I could say, okay, I'd like everything red to be darker. So if I go over here to preview and I come up here to reds, and I can make that all darker, just like that. Then I could come back here and click preview again and go say, okay, maybe I'd like the greens to be darker. Well, okay, what was green? Well, I happen to know this top one was. But wouldn't it be nice if we could actually do the editing right on the image itself? Well, if you look at this, when we go to this preview, you see how this turns into a little eyedropper? And if I move this little eyedropper down to the letter P in pay, and if I click on this, what do we see? That's a scrubby. Now, not only is this identifying what color this really is, now this is going to go and affect the slider that is consistent with the color. And watch this. All I have to do is click on this and slide my mouse left or right. I can make that white if I'd like, or I can make that black. So let's go to Friday Night Photoshop. If I click on this, not much is happening there. Why isn't that happening? Oh, because that's gray. Yeah, right. Yeah. So if you click on something that is gray, the scrubby won't come up. So that's why in this Friday Night Photoshop, that's just a light gray. Now, if I click on the word now, you'll see nothing here is changing either. But if I come down here to the word need, and that D, well, I can certainly move that around just by moving the scrubby left and right. And you see how that's picking up on the blue slider? So that's how we can go in and affect an image directly. And let's go do that. So let's tip this image to black and white. And I'm going to do this a couple of different ways just to be able to show you the difference. So I'm going to bring out layers, and I'm going to go Control J and Control J a second time. So in this instance here, I'm going to do that Control U and just simply desaturate. Arguably, that's definitely black and white. So mission accomplished. But is it the best? Well, let's find out. So I'm going to take this upper layer, keeping this one down below just as a reference. And now I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Black and White. Now instantly it tipped to black and white. Now we could step through these and say, well, which one might look better? And this can be kind of fun to see what it comes up with. Some of these, like that one I'm not so hot on. That's definitely black and white, but you see there's different flavors of black and white. That one's not too bad. That one's okay. So you see we can step through these. Or what I'm going to do is just stay on the default, and I'm going to actually come in on the photo itself with the eyedropper, and I'm going to say, let's make some adjustments. So first thing is, these rocks are kind of gray, and this is a lighter gray. Well, wouldn't it be nice to make these just maybe a little bit darker, and take these rocks and maybe make them a little bit lighter? Okay, so there I'm just moving that around. The roof on this house, maybe make that a little darker. Now you'll notice that there are some colors that are consistent here. Is there anything in the sky? Not much. How about over here in the sky? Ah, yeah. So I'm just going in and just simply moving this around and seeing if I can get, this I know is red. Oh, so is the roof. Okay. So maybe I like it like that. So that's what I've done to convert that to black and white, and I could certainly do more. I mean, after this, I could go in and go to levels, and I could do even more. But how does that compare to the first version? So I have to come out of this and say, okay, and let's just look at the first one. Well, the first one didn't do too bad, but this one, I liked some of the nuances in here where I've got some highlights that are just a little bit nicer. You see the difference between that and this? To me, that is a little flat. This one certainly brings out some more detail. So that proves my point that just simply desaturating isn't always the best way to go. Let's do another one. Here is a fern that's on this forest floor with a bunch of pine needles. Now, if I go and make 2 copies of this again, and on this layer, I'm just going to simply desaturate by doing the Control U. Watch the fern. To me, that's not so good. So let's go and do it this other way. Image, adjustments, black and white. And in this case, I know that that fern is green, so I could see that green filter, and that helped a lot right there. And maybe I could try some other ones, like how about a red filter? Nah, that doesn't do any good. And I could look at blue just for the heck of it. Nah, don't like it. So what if I were to go in and do this myself? So this green, I'm going to click and hold, and I can bring that up. And then the straw or the pine needles that are in the background, I picked one that was the same color. And I did it again. But point is, there's some yellow in the green, obviously. That's why that's doing that. But if I come back to this green, well, you see, I could make that darker. But more importantly, I can pull this up to make it stand out a little bit more. And I like that. Now I can just come right over here to these sliders and just affect them. You see, the red brings that background down because there's a bit of orange in the in that. And I can adjust the green once again. And if I say OK to this, now let's compare what I've just done here versus that was what it did when I just simply did a desaturate. So again, I think this best illustrates why it's better for you to go and take the control of desaturating something if you have an interest to get this to be really, if you want to make the contrast look a little better. So I'm going to open up this picture of this peony, and I'm going to go up to, I'll do the same thing here, Control J, I'm doing it twice. So for the very first one, I'm going to go and say Control U, and I'm just going to desaturate this. And there, desaturated. Now let's go do it using the adjustments and hue, adjustments and black and white. Now there are some tinting abilities down here that we'll get into in just a moment. But for right now, I just would like to take maybe this area and darken it, and maybe take this area and maybe lighten this up quite a bit. And I could lighten all of that, or I could even make this a little more contrasty. But let's just see what happens if I did that. Now, if I say OK to this, look at this version of black and white versus that version. That's just desaturate. This is desaturate, but on steroids. Now, let's go take a look at what we can do with the tinting. If I click tint, here is a quick way to be able to make this look maybe sepia toned, just subtle. Now, if you wanted to go with something other than sepia, you could pick a color. Remember anybody who did darkroom, if you used acetone, it made everything look a slight bluish color in your black and white prints. Now there it is. And I can pick whatever color I might want. I can add a little more saturation. All this is doing is just tipping the entire image to whatever shade I might move this to. And again, I'd say that perhaps one of the more common ones that people might want would be the sepia tone. Now, it doesn't work necessarily well for flowers, but if you wanted a sepia tone, there it is. Now, there are other ways to make a sepia tone, and let me just show you one other way that I think is even quicker. Remember the Control U where we did the saturation? Well, if I just go and click on Colorize, and if I move this down to, I think it's like around 27 to 28, somewhere in that area, that'll work. And then if I bring the saturation down, that's not a bad sepia tone right there. And let's look at the before and after. Here's where I started, and there's the after. Just subtle. You don't want to fill it with color. And this could be useful if you're working on an old image that might be already sepia tone, but maybe there's some water damage, or maybe something happened that you've got some colors that came into it. You could tip it to black and white, and then go tip it back to sepia tone. And that would give you the original look. So let's do this one more time. Here are some kayaks that were on this display on this beach. And let's do the sample again. So first thing I'm going to do is just show you the typical desaturate. This could be what somebody might do for like a newspaper, or somebody just to do it real quick. So there's that. Now we're going to go in and go Image, Adjustments, and black and white. Already I think that's better, but let's go ahead and work on this. So these maybe we'd like to go a little bit darker, and these over here we could go just maybe a little bit lighter. Even this is giving us just some better tonality. I can even maybe work on the stand. You see, you do have some colors that are consistent, so you might be thinking you're getting just one area, but you're not. Like here's the blue sky. So we can make that blue sky darker, or we could even go lighter with it. But let's just darken the blue sky just a little bit, and maybe let's make these stand up just a little. Okay, now let's just go compare this. That's what the typical take to black and white did. And this one just gives us a little more control that we could go and do a little bit more with this. And of course, I just did this very quickly. So you could spend more time on this to get this exactly the way you might want to do it. So that's tipping color to black and white. So for part 2 of this talk, I'd like to talk about how to quickly colorize some black and white images. This can be really useful if you have images where the colors might be really off, and you might just take it and make it black and white and then add color to it. So let's see how we do that. First, we need a black and white image. So I'm going to start with this one. The black and white images can come from anywhere. It could be a scan of a photo. It could be a black and white negative that you scanned. Doesn't matter. All you have to do is bring it in, and it can be any file type. It could be a JPEG, could be a TIFF. So here is a black and white image, and what we're going to talk about now is neural filters. If I go to filter and then come down here, we see neural filters. Well, when I click on this, you're going to see several options. Now, when you look at these on your screen, you might see what looks like a little cloud next to some of these. Well, that just means that you haven't downloaded it yet. These are filters that you have to go and install, and they are free. So I have done this, and the one that I'm going to go to under the color category is this one right here that's called Colorize. And what this does is it helps to add color to a black and white image. Now, don't expect this to look like you ran out and shot it today, because remember, this image may have been taken 100 years ago or more. But it's rather remarkable what it will do. If I simply turn this little pointer on, look at what it just did. Now, I can work with that. Maybe I don't like this blue up here, but you know what? I could actually go in afterward and I could do a simple mask and darken this and maybe tip this to a green. But look at this. We got a green grass. We do have kind of a blue sky. This tree here is green, so is this. The walkway looks not too bad. Now, we do have some ability to be able to adjust this. Honestly, I've never found these to be that successful, but we can try it. So in this case, maybe the yellow blue. Let's just see what happens if I were to add a little more yellow. And we have to give it a moment because it's processing. And that warmed up the whole scene. That's not too bad. And maybe I don't want quite as much green, so I'm just going to move the magenta green slider over and let's see what that does. That's not too bad. Added a little bit of warmth to the house. Maybe I don't want quite that much, so I'll move that back. And then if I take the cyan red, maybe I would like to have a little more on the red side. See if that'll warm things up. Yeah, that's not too bad. Or we could go in the other direction. So once you have this, I like that better. So once you have this the way you want it, there are some other things you can do here. Color artifact reduction and noise reduction. I almost rather go into regular Photoshop tools and work with it at that point. And for the noise reduction, same thing. I'd rather take this into Adobe Camera Raw and work with that. So here are the output options. We can output this as a new color layer. Well, we don't need that. That would be if you just wanted to have just the colors. But here is one thing I do want, is I'd like to output this as a new layer. And now I will say OK. Now, depending upon how big the file is, how fast your processor works, and other factors of that nature, this can take a little longer in some cases to process. And there's the result right there. So that's not too bad, considering how we started as a black and white. Now, we'll look at this. Here's where we started. That's where we're ending. Now, as I'd mentioned, I might be inclined to come in here, and even if I did a real loose thing like circling this tree, Okay, I'm just doing this really quick. And if I just went in and did a Control L for levels, I could very quickly just go and say, well, let's just darken that tree up just a little bit. And then this is where I could do a Control U and use this little slider and say, okay, go find the dominant color here, and now let's just remove it by going this way, and then maybe I would like to darken that just a little. So that's just real quick there. But there is a colorized image. Let's do this again. Oh, and from here, I would simply save it, just like I would any other file. I'd just come over here and do a save as, and then I could save it as whatever file type. You've got all these different file types from which to choose. And if you're looking to save this in some format that you could go back and edit, Photoshop file would probably be a good choice, because now you've got both of these layers, the colorized one and the black and white one, that you could then go back and choose to edit between those two. Maybe you make a layer mask and have one portion in color and another portion, you can keep it black and white. Let's go do another. So here is an old shot that has people. This is a scan. And if I come up here to filter, go to neural filters, and then I'm going to come over. Oh, look at this. It found the faces. That's nice. But I'm just going to turn on colorize. It's good that it found the faces. And boom, it's that simple. Now I could work with that. That's not bad. This could be a lot of fun, by the way, if you're ever creating a slideshow for like an anniversary. Take some of the older images and just simply colorize them and throw them into the slideshow. And then watch people's reactions when they say, I didn't know that was in color. But that's how quickly you can go and colorize something. And if you don't think it's quite right, for instance, right over here, well, maybe this wasn't a purple shirt. And so what I could do is go in and just make a loose selection, really a loose selection of just the shirt. And then I could come in to do this Control U, and I could pick on this color here, and then I could just change the hue to make that, maybe that was a blue shirt. And I would also have to pick up on this area here and make that blue as well. But you see, I'm just doing this really fast. But I could do that. I could actually colorize this, although that may not look the best. No, I don't like that. I would have had to have made a better selection, which I could easily do. But you can see what I've done here. And once again, here's how we started. That was initially a black and white, and now it's color. It's got some scratches in here. That would be where you'd want to use the spot healing brush and make this really small and just follow the scratch. And there you go. So here's an image that is already sepia tone. And what we'd like to do here is to see what will happen if I just simply convert this to color. And I'm just going to leave the sepia tone alone. So when I come up here and go to neural filters, and if I say colorize, let's just see if it knows what to do. Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm going to say okay to this. Now, I might do a little cropping here because I don't think I need most of what's on the left-hand side. But look at this. It found the grass. It assigned colors to the coat and the pants and this and even the hat. And as whimsical as this image is, you just compare this to that. I mean, that doesn't look too bad for a simple button click. So that's going from black and white to color. Let's talk about a couple of advanced things that we might want to do. So we're going to go back to doing the color to black and white. One thing that's important is you want to make the very best color image that you can. And it's okay to slightly oversaturate this a little bit if you need to. because the more color you have in the scene, the more that the color to black and white conversion is going to have for doing that conversion. If I were to desaturate this, it's not going to have as much to work with. So I pump up the saturation just a little bit, and this might be oversaturated, but that's okay. So I'm going to do a Control J and a Control J, and we'll just do that because it's easy. We'll just go ahead and desaturate this one. So I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and then choose Black and White. And I'm going to use the scrubby method where I'm going to go and lighten up some things. And maybe I'll darken that sky to make that look a little more dramatic, or maybe I could even lighten it. I'll just do that. Maybe I'd like the ground to be a little darker. You see, by having made this a little more colorful up front, these controls are giving me a little more to work with. Whereas if this was kind of muted, then I wouldn't have those radical swings that you're seeing there as far as that goes. Okay, let's see how is that compared to the simple saturation. Yeah, you see that's pretty simple. And so here is the result compared to just the simple tip to black and white. You might see that in the newspaper, but wouldn't that look nicer? So the rule of thumb is make the very best color image that you can, and then go and tip it to black and white using the channel mixer is really what it's called. That's where you go up to Image, and then Adjustments, and then black and white. Now, of course, in this scenario, it's not going to do anything because we've already tipped this to black and white. Now, I mentioned that we're going to do some advanced things here. With this black and white, wouldn't it be kind of cool to have some selective color? So I could put a mask in here. Remember layers? And if I were to grab a brush, and if I were to paint with black, which I'm already in, watch what happens if I come down here and just paint the boat. So this is how we can do a highlight. Okay, now I painted outside the lines, but that's okay, because remember, I can go back and simply paint with white, and that's going to erase everywhere where I didn't get it quite right. Now I could make a selection, but I'm just kind of showing off the fact that I can do this pretty quickly. But you see I got to go back here. Just by hitting the X key, that exchanges this. So that's why when I do this, a lot of times I will just keep my finger right on the X key so I can easily switch back and forth. And if I want to make sure that I got the whole boat, if I hit Alt and this layer, I can see that I didn't get it all filled in. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this real quickly, just like that. Yep, so that's my layer. And now I've got just the boat in color. And I could even change the opacity of that, couldn't I? I could like have everything in the background just slightly in color and the boat's full color. But in this case, I'd like to keep it separate like that. Let me show you one other sample where I had some fun with this. Ours was, I think, the red car. But the point is, I thought it was kind of cool that there would happen to be a red, a blue, and a green car in this parking lot. And I just tipped everything to black and white, and then I just brought back those respective cars. So you can do this to actually highlight something too. If you had a picture of a running race and your friend's running in that race, wouldn't it be cool to tip the whole thing to black and white, but then just color in your friend? so she'd stand out, right? Or he would stand out. So it's just some fun things you can do with black and white and color all on the same screen by using a mask. So there you have it. That's taking color images and making them black and white and making them the very best black and white, and taking some older black and white images and having some fun by colorizing them. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you at another Friday Night Photoshop.